I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas faced questions from Republican senators about a newly announced Disinformation Governance Board during Wednesday's Senate Appropriations hearing. Republicans have called it, quote, Orwellian, while Mayorkas has stressed that it will not be censoring speech. He also said it will now be a, quote, working group. Listen in as the Secretary addresses the issue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. My first question is about your Disinformation Governance Board, which you have downgraded now to a working group. First of all, the name in and of itself has, I think, implications to all of us. I heard all about this all over the weekend of concern of sort of an Orwellian, policing of speech. You yourself have even admitted, and you just repeated it here today, that the rollout of this has been vastly, you say, misunderstood. So I think, quite honestly, for the good of the rest of the department, that now is a good time to abandon this ludicrous and much maligned idea. I wonder, when you say that we have operational control of the border, is that definitionally disinformation? Because from a lot of our perspectives, we don't believe that is true. So it seems such a subjective and undefined what disinformation is. I would challenge you to punt this and rethink for the reasons that you mentioned, which are important reasons to try to deter violence following speech, to make sure that the American people really understand what's going on here. So if you want to make a quick comment, fine, and then I'll get to questions.
I do. Thank you very much, Ranking Member Capito. I certainly haven't downgraded this to a working group. That's what it is.
Well, it started as a board, though, right?
Well, we can discuss the nomenclature, but the point is that the work is so very important to achieving the mission in a way that does not infringe on free speech, on civil rights and civil liberties, on the right of privacy. Our work in this department in addressing disinformation that threatens the security of the homeland has been going on for almost 10 years. And so I asked the question, and we asked the question within the department, what efforts do we have underway? What policies and procedures, what standards of conduct do we have in place to ensure that that vitally important Homeland Security work is done in a way that ensures that it does not infringe on fundamental rights? And the answer was inadequate. And so we put together a working group to ensure that the guardrails are in place, that we have clear definitions, that we have good policies and practices in place to protect the very rights that also are our responsibility not to infringe upon.
These are very sensitive issues to Americans who believe fundamentally in the right to freedom of speech. You know that. And so I think the way that it's been rolled out, your explanation now, we have FEMA, we have CBP, we have CISA who work on all of these issues within your department right now. So I'm going to move to another issue. I want to talk about ICE enforcement and removal. We haven't been satisfied with the reports that you have generating now that don't give us, I don't think, a good sense of how many people are actually deported, how many people, whether you're deporting more criminals or not. You're arguing that deportations for aggravated felonies have gone up, but we can't get behind the data. So I'm asking you right now, will you commit to providing to this committee within 30 days all the raw data behind this report, at least to the extent that was provided in 2020, so we can compare apples to apples with previous reports?
Ranking Member Capito, most certainly, and I'm very disappointed to hear that you feel that you haven't received the data that we are obligated to provide to you in this committee. I certainly have some of it at my fingertips if you'd like to.
I think it's more of a case of reconfiguring how the data is presented, so we can't have an accurate view of where these numbers and how they compare to 2020. But we can work with you on this over the next 30 days as we'll get those figures. I want to ask about the ICE bed cut, because I think this is important. You have testified that you don't have the resources, or you've mentioned you don't have the resources to really detain and hold people. We know that we have appropriated last year 34,000 beds, but because of COVID, you only have those 75% occupied, which is sort of ironic in that Title 42 is going away under a COVID national emergency, yet the ability to use all of your detention beds is stymied because of the COVID requirements by CDC. So that doesn't jive at all. How can you, at the one hand, say you don't have the resources, and on the other hand, come in with a budget that asks for funding for 9,000 fewer beds?
Ranking Member Capito, first of all, we are awaiting new CDC guidelines with respect to our use of detention space, number one. And number two, I have to take a step back, because when we talk about, when we look at the challenge of the border, which has been an enduring challenge, certainly since the Department of Homeland Security was created, whether it's 24,000 beds, 25,000 beds, 31,000 beds, that's not going to address the challenge at the border. There's unanimity in the view that the immigration system is broken and we need Congress to fix it. That's the fundamental enduring response to the problem. In the meantime, what we are looking at, as I identified in our 6 lines of effort that define our preparation and plan, our months-long preparation and planning for the end of Title 42, the CDC's authority, gets to more fundamental solutions, working with countries to the south to ensure that they manage their respective borders, that they provide humanitarian relief and stability to people who qualify under their laws and repatriate individuals who don't. The challenge that we are encountering at the border is not ours alone. This is a regional problem. There are more than 1.8 million Venezuelans in Colombia. In the small country of Costa Rica, that population, the population of that small country is approximately 2% Nicaraguan right now and growing rapidly. This is a regional problem, and we have got to get to the heart of its cause.
And I would just add, I know I'm over my time, that deterrence is something that I don't think you've placed enough emphasis on. One of the deterrents is detention. Instead of putting alternatives to detention where you put a bracelet where there's 260,000 people in this country under this alternative to detention, and that number is growing, that's not a deterrent. And you stated over on the House side that you're deporting folks but after they have their asylum claims, but you didn't leave this is after 6 to 8 years after they've been in the country waiting for their claim. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I look forward to responding to that, Ranking Member Capito, because that 6 to 8 year period has indeed been a problem for years and years, not just in the past administration, all 4 years of the past administration, but earlier than that too. And we are the first administration to actually tackle that issue and promulgate the asylum officer rule that will take that 6 to 8 year period and reduce it to under a year.
Senator Sheen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, thank